Okay, we're on Samach Vav on the base. This Gemara is pretty dense. It's not, I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's just a lot of detail. So, in the middle of Samach Vav on the base, we're up to Va'amra Papa. Alpha Gav the Amra Banana, Smachta Lekani. Right, so we've been talking till now about the case of someone, Reuben borrowed money from Shimon, and he told Shimon, I owe you $1,000, and if by some reason after 3 years I end up not paying, you can have my property, my Empire State Building that's worth $2,000. So, like we said, it's an asmachta. Reuben never really expects not to pay back. As someone, I do on occasion lend people money, and everyone really, really believes that they're going to pay back. They truly believe it. And in most cases, they don't end up paying back in spite of their sincere belief that they're going to do so. So this person, even though he sincerely believed he was going to pay back at the end of 3 years, if it ends up not happening, he's going to be very surprised that, now I have to give up my property. I never really meant that. I never thought that was going to happen. So the Rabbanan say it's not Kanye because he never really, it was just supposed to be a reassurance to this foolish lender who thought that for some reason I wasn't going to pay back. But I know that I'm going to pay him back, so therefore I'm not really being mocked at him. So even though Rabbanan say loy Kanye, apoitika hava lemigve minei. It does become an apoitiki that at the end of the 3 years, the lender, takes possession of the property. He doesn't get the whole Empire State Building, the whole $2,000 worth as compensation or as a penalty for the borrower not coming up with the money, but he does get kafi the amount of the actual loan. So he owns, floors 1 to 40 of the Empire State Building. Amalei Rav Huna Breder Rav Nasan Rav Papa mi Amalei Kani Lugavaina mi Amalei Kani Lugavaina. How could you say it becomes an apaitiki, that it becomes that he's been kinda this property at the end of the 3 years for the amount of the loan? He never said that. He said, well, the way he expressed it was, you can own the property if I don't pay back. Now all of a sudden you're transforming what the original agreement was, and you're saying that the lender now owns the property to the extent of the loan. Such a thing was never made up at the beginning. So how could you transform their agreement into something else, into an agreement to pay back from this property? He says, let's say he would have said that. Let's say, what you're suggesting, the problem with this din of saying that it becomes an apaitiki, that the lender can be gaiva to the extent of the loan from that property. Let's say he would have made that up from the beginning. Would that have really worked? What is he saying? He's saying after 3 years, if I don't pay you, you could take from this property the amount of the loan. It's still, the borrower did not expect that to happen. He thought he was going to be able to come up with the cash. He didn't think he was going to have to give up his favorite property. So the lender should not be able to be kind of. It's just an asmachta, and it's not a real kinyan. So what does the taka mean? The amalei lo yehelecha piroin elamizu. He's telling him, it's saying a different thing. He's saying that when he becomes an apaitika, when he says this property should be an apaitika, it's not talking about where he said that at the end of 3 years you should own this more expensive property, but rather it's talking about, let's see, the Rashi explains where he says Which is right opposite. Where he said, if at any point you want to get paid, you should just know I'm not going to pay you a cash. This lender had his eye on the Empire State Building, which we find very often. I used to work with distressed debt purchasers. Guys, instead of buying stock or instead of buying partnership shares, would buy distressed debt in order that they could have access to a property. That was their way. They wanted to foreclose on the property. So he said to him, the lender made up with the borrower that if you ever want to prepay this debt, you have to pay me using that property that you own. So and he said the second thing, he also said, but if I don't pay it within 3 years from this property, then the penalty kicks in, and then it's going to be kula shalach. So even though the second portion of that statement, that he's saying that it should be all yours at the end of 3 years, that there should be a penalty, because that's an asmachta. The first part works, because that part has nothing to do with the asmachta. That's just saying that the payment should be from this property. This is what makes this Gemara hard, is that there's so much explanation that is not, it's not clear in the Gemara. You have to really look in the Rishonim to understand what we're talking about. Hahu Gavra, the Zavan Le'ara Lechabre Ba'achrayis. Ruvain sold the property to Shimon Ba'achrayis. He said that if I have a previous debt and the creditor, the lender, comes to the gaiva, this property, because I don't have money to pay him, you can come back to me, you, Shimon, can come back to me, Ruvain, and I'll pay you back. Amalei. And he said to him, and Shimon said to Ruvain, listen, if they come and take this property from me, the achrayis, I want the achrayis to be that you're going to pay me from your idei idis, not from regular idis, but from the top of the line, from the, as I said, from the Empire State Building, the crown jewel of your property. Now, a Baal Chayv generally is only entitled to beinidis. So he's saying, I don't want just idis, I want idis. I want the best of the best. Amalei. So Reuben answered him back, idis le magvinalach. I'm not willing to give you my Empire State Building. Ela magvinalach idis achem deisli. I'll give you some other idis. I'll give you some other midtown property, a regular nondescript office building in Midtown. So it's not Harlem, it's not Ziburis, but it's still Idis. So l'soif tarfu minei, obviously, as is always inevitable in these cases, Ruvain's creditor comes and takes the property away from Shimon. Also, Batra shatkal ideyidis, and the act of God came, a bitka, shot of nar, a river came and wiped away the Empire State Building. So the Empire State Building is not around anymore. Now, Reuben had never promised to give Shimon the Empire State Building. So all Reuben had promised was to take from his regular idis, and nothing happened to that. That's still in existence. So Reuben should be obligated to pay that as his achrayis for the property that was taken away from Shimon. Vachami Difti said to Ravina, Malay. No, Reuben has a taina to Shimon why he doesn't even want to give him the idis. When I said to you that you could take it, meaning idis, idis kaima, because at that point this wasn't my crown jewel. My crown jewel was the Empire State Building, the idiots. And the idis was just my regular holdings. But hashta kaimas idis b'makam idis. But now my idis becomes my idis. So there's a subjective evaluation because the person explained to him, I don't want to give you my best, I'll give you my second best. So this now becomes his best, and therefore that's he never intended to give it under these circumstances. Nothing. This part had nothing to do with ribis. It was just a din of how we look at what the person says. Rav Bar Sheva, of a masuk be Rav Kahana Zuzi. Rav Bar Sheva owed money to Rav Kahana. Amalei. And this Rav Bar Sheva said to Rav Kahana, if I don't pay you for this day in the future in 3 years, Govi mehai chamra. I have this Dom Perignon that I'm going to make that's what you could pay, you could get paid from that. So very similar to what we have talked about, right? We've talked now about a piece of property, a sod or a bias, where he makes it as a penalty if he doesn't pay. Over here, he took some metaltalin, some wine. Supper man. When do we say that the person who agrees to pay to give something, this wine, it wasn't necessarily worth so much now, but in the future, at the time that this is going to expire, that's going to be when the wine is more expensive in the marketplace. It will be more expensive. It will be worth more than the value of the loan. So it's parallel. This case is similar to the case of asmachta lekanya, where a person had assigned a certain mashkin of karka, which was worth more than what the loan was worth. So the Papa is saying, he wanted to say that maybe that which we say that a person doesn't really intend to give away this penalty item is when the penalty item is karka. People generally, they try to hold on to their karka forever. It's a very good investment, and they need it. The person needs it to live on. That's what he works the field, and he gets his crops, and that's what he lives off of. So it's only in dire circumstances that he gives up his property. So that's why we say asmachta lekanya, where a person is giving up ara, he's giving up karka. Aval chamra, even those vunikai, since chamra is an inventory item, it's a commodity that people often sell. Kazuzi dummy, it's as if he just made up a penalty. But it's not such a, he says, okay, so I'll have to pay a little bit more. And a person might be saimachdas on it. Amalei Ravuna Breda Vishul Rav Papa, Achi Amrina Mishmei the Rabba, called the E Loikani. He says in the end, anytime he says a de, meaning if, where he makes the payment of a penalty dependent on whether he pays or not, whether he pays the loan on time or not, it's always an asmach. There's no distinction between ara or anything else, and it's still going to remain asmach like time. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabban, asmach like kanya. Now that we say, according to the Rabbanan, the asmachta is not kind. When a person I think we're going back to the original case of asmachta. We're talking now about someone who sold a property and he made this is what we had talked about before we started talking about a mashkin. We had talked about where someone sold a property, Reuven sold the property to Shimon, and Reuven retained the right to the option to repurchase the property from Shimon. So we had talked about so we said that that's an asmachta, that a person doesn't really mean to, what is this talking about? There's really nothing about this in Rashi, right? So let's work this through. Hadar Arav, a Hadar Peri. We're going to say in a case of such a case where a person said that that I'm selling the property, but I want to retain the right to sell it, to purchase it back. In the meantime, the person who bought the property is going to continue to eat the peiros. So the din is going to be Hadar Arav, a Hadar Peri. At the end of the time, obviously the land is going to have to go back. No, I'm sorry. It's not talking about the case. It's talking about some and a smachta. Like I think it's talking about a penalty case. The pashtus.
The case of the case we said if you don't pay it back in 3 years, I'm
right.
going
It's
to take
talking about some a mashkin, a halva. I think. Well, let's work it through. Okay. I think that's what it's talking about. He said, I'm borrowing, Reuben's borrowing money. And he said, if I don't pay it back in time, then you're going to get this property as a penalty. So now we're saying it's not kani. It's not going to be kani to Shimon. Hadar. So if Shimon decides to take the property illegally, because we said it's not kanya, Hadar of a hadra peri. He also has to return to him the peiros that he has eaten in the interim. So tomorrow, remember the Savar of Nachman, Mechila B'Tois, Lehavi Mechila. Are you saying that the reason why the peiros have to go back is because even though the borrower gave this property to the lender and as a mashkin, and he didn't object when he was eating the peiros, so l'chayr is meichel him to eat the peiros. Now, even though it will blibe ribbis, and it's going to be an issue of ribbis, but it should be a mechila. But someone who sold the peiros dekel, the peiros of a tree that he has, and he said that when the peiros are going to grow, I'm selling it to you. Until these peiros come out, until they grow, he can be chayzer on this deal because it's a davar shla ba'alayim. So there's no kinyan on a davar shla ba'alayim. So you could always be machzer. However, once they actually grow, once these fruits show up, then it's too late to be chayzer. Then the kinyan takes place. Nachman says, no, it's a davar shla ba'alayim. Even when they sprout, it still remains that the agreement was before it was the davar shabalaylam, and therefore the seller can be chayzer on it. The Amar of Nachman, Rav Nachman says, "Medina, however, I am by the dishamet va'achalei mafkinamine." If the purchaser, it's not just that they made an agreement on davar shabalaylam. It's not just that the fruit sprouted, the fruit grew. But if the purchaser who had given the money actually ate the fruit, you don't take it away from him. Why not? It must be because we say, a mechila b'tois, this is someone, he didn't realize that davar shel ba'olam is not a kani. But in the end, the seller was Michael. He allowed him to have it, even though it was not kani to him. And the purchaser ate it b'tois. So that's a mechila, and the mechila works. So why do we say the same thing over here? Why do we say, by the case of asmachta loy kanya, where the lender has eaten the peiros of the mashkin, b'tois, not realizing that it's an asmachta that's not kanya, and he got it after the 3 years b'tois as a mashkin, even though it was just an asmachta, and he ate the peiros. Why do we say over there why don't we say that it's a mechila b'tois, that although it was a tois, they thought that an asmachta is kanya, and the borrower therefore was meichel to the lender to eat the peiros, Even though it's b'tois, we see Rav Nachman says l'gabi davar shelo b'layla, but mechila b'tois is a good mechila. And with the Gemara, hasam zvini hacha halva. It's a difference. In the case over there of davar shelo b'layla, it was talking about a sale. Over here, it's a halva. And Rashi says, what does it make a difference? It's halva, hacha halvahu, umechsi kiribis. The problem here is that it's mechsi kiribis. The lender who was yared to this property, in Teres Mashkin, al smakta bi'alma, it came to him as a halva, this property. I mean, he got this as a mashkin and a halva. Or kiribis k'tutzadami. And it's like ribis k'tutza. But in a ribis davar halva, elbo davar mecha kain amar beperes the masnisim. This is something that's starting as a halva. So therefore it is more similar to ribis k'tutza, and it's mechzik ribis, and therefore it's going to be aser, even though mechila b'tois really is a mechila according to Rav Nachman. We are concluding that he holds it's a mechila, but doesn't help you for these peiros in the case of asmachta of a loan where the person was yared to the peiros because you have a problem of mafsik. Look, Tumar, Havi Yasivna Kameder of Nachman. They were sitting in front of Rav Nachman, Oboil Usvei Oino, Voidik, Chazis and Islands. They wanted to ask on Rav Nachman from the case of Oino. Rav Nachman is concluding that Mechila B'toyis is a Mechila, and they were asking from Oino, and he responded to them from Islanders. So the Gemara is going to explain what that means. What is the kasha on Rav Nachman, which we've concluded that he says Mechila B'toyis is a Mechila from Oino? So Gemara, know the Mechila B'toyis, when someone pays Oino, when he pays extra, when he's buying something, that we said you undo the sale, and he has to provide a refund, or we treat it as a mekach, depending on the shita and depending on the case. And we say even though the buyer agreed to pay that amount, so l'chayr he's meichel, he's agreeing to pay it, and even so we say it's not enforceable, and we undo the transaction. So l'chayr, how could Rav Nachman say that mechila b'toyis is a good mechila if we see by Aino we don't treat it as a mechila? V'oidik, and Rav Nachman responded, Chazis and Islanders. No, but we see differently by Islanders. Hari Islanders, the Mechila B'tois, Vahavi Mechila. That by Islanders, even though it is a Mechila B'tois, where it is a Mechila B'tois, and we say it is a good Mechila. The Tanat. Where do we see by an Islanders that it's a Mechila B'tois? The Tanat. Ha-Ma'enes V'ashniya V'ha-Islanders. A Ma'enes is a woman who was a Ketana that got married by her brother and mothers, which is only the Rabbanandik Kedushin. So she has the ability to undo the marriage before her Bas Mitzvah. Ashniya is someone who's also to get married Midir Rabbanan. So the Chamim guys that she has to be divorced. But an islandist is a woman who's not really roy for Kedushin. So, and I'm not Anil Rahab. No. Rahab Sheva. Sheva. An islandess is a woman who's incapable, who doesn't have Simone Ishus. And she's not capable of Kedushin. A man cannot be Mekadosh an islandess. But he doesn't realize that at the time that he marries her. He married her when she was a Ketana, or she appeared like a Ketana. So all these people, Ein Lahen like Ksuba. They don't get a Ksuba. Ma'enes doesn't get a Ksuba because she's the one who initiated the separation. It's not a divorce per se because they're not really married. And a Shniya, it's a penalty. She doesn't get the Ksuba because they were over on a Derabanan. And the islandess doesn't get a Ksuba because it was never an ishus. There was never a kedushin. The loy peiros, the isha also doesn't get the peiros, meaning the husband is allowed to is entitled to the peiros of the nichsei melug. So all these women don't get compensation for the peiros that he ate, that he really shouldn't have eaten in the case of the Manis. And the shnia, it's a penalty. And like we said, in Ireland, it was never a marriage. Even so, she doesn't get back her peiros, below mezainis, and not if she laid out money to purchase mezainis during their marriage, she doesn't get compensation from him. Below, and she also doesn't get the worn out remnants of the property that she brought into the marriage. He gets to keep those worn out, basically God. But by an islandess, he was Michael. He gave her these things. So it means what?
So, well, you see the fact that he doesn't have to return the pairs, that it's a machila?
So Rashi says, "V'avagav d'chi machla he nedunya dilah l'ma'aser b'yadei tois havet." All these things that she gave him and was saying he's allowed to keep. She gave him a dowry, and now he's keeping the bloyas, and he's keeping that which he got the peiros. It's a mechila b'tois. She only gave it by mistake. She didn't know that she was an islandess either. It's still considered a mechila, that he's allowed to keep it. Zok Gemara, v'lohi. Both aspects of this are mistaken. That which we say by Oino, that the mechila is not a mechila, that's not a kasha. That has nothing to do with the general question of mechila b'tois. And islandess is not a raya that mechila b'tois, when she's Michael, it's not a raya that even though she's being Michael mistakenly, it's a mechila. The Gemara explains. Lo Oino to yufta. It's not a kasha that you don't see it from Oino, that mechila b'tois is not a mechila. The liyada, isa Oino the machal gabe. By Oino, the buyer, he's not being meichel on paying extra. He doesn't know he's paying extra. He thinks that's the market price. So you can't bring a raya from there that mechila b'tois is a mechila. He was never meichel. Below, he never became aware of it. Below, islandess misayele, and islandess is not a raya from the fact that she is meichel. That mechila b'tois is a mechila when she becomes aware that she's meichel. The nichala the tebegala shema the ishus, because it's taka worth it for her. When she finds out that she's an islandess, she still wants him to keep these things, because she would rather that people think this is a regular divorce. He's letting her go, and she's a regular woman. But if they were to reverse and give her back whatever it was that he got during the marriage, saying that it was a sham marriage, then people will become aware she's an islandess. It's not worth it for her. She'd rather have less money and more self-respect. There was a woman, the Amalei Lahu Gavra, said to a man, Zil Zovenli Ara Mikreve, go buy some property from my relatives. Azol Zovenla, he went and purchased it. Amalei, and they said to him, these people that sold the property, this was a shliach. This woman sent a shliach to go buy property from her own relatives. And these relatives, when they sold it to the shliach, when they gave it to the shliach, they said, they said, if we're going to have money, we want you to return, we want to be able to get back this property that we just sold, which we said before, back in the Mishnah, we said in the Brisa, it's a problem of ribbis, right? Because the peiros that they're eating in the meantime is going to be the ribbis. This is more like a loan, if they could always get back their property. But we're going to see. The Gemara doesn't directly address that. Amalei at benivla achi. So the shliach said to them, "Listen, you're trying to now make this this imposition of this t'nai or this option. You and the original and the purchaser, you're close relatives. So there's two ways of looking at it. Either he was telling them you're relatives, and therefore I'm sure she agrees to what you're asking for, or he was telling them she's your relative. This Navla, which was the original woman who had sent him, according to Rashi's second shot, she'll take care of you. I'm not committing to anything, but chances are, since she's your relative, if you want to give back the money, she'll probably sell back the property, which is like we said to Midaita. He reserved, what he was really saying was, I'm not committing to anything. Amar Rabba Baba Ravhuna, Kol Afan Navla Achi, Amar Samcha Daita V'Legamro Makneara. He said that whenever you have such a thing, what it means is he's agreeing, he's saying she's your friend, she's your relative, and she would probably agree to this. She would agree to this t'nai, this stipulation, and therefore, it's not a full-fledged kinyan that can't be chayzer. If you decide you want to buy it back, you can buy it back. So Gemara, Hadra Perimai. What's the din about the Paris? This is what I got confused with earlier. Once we're talking now about such a case of kinyan, where someone buys a property but reserves for himself the right to, when someone buys the property, but the seller reserves the right to undo the sale if he comes up with the money. So it's almost a little bit like a loan of money. And we said before, if the seller keeps the money, it's going to be ribis or mechzik ribis. What happens if he took the Paris, which he wasn't allowed to take? It's ribis. Hadra perimai. Is there a din that Bezdin will take away the Paris, which we said before? It's a machlekes. We said that the machlekes, even about Paris ktsutza, but there's also, but if it's not Paris ktsutza, I'm sorry, if it's not ribis ktsutza, it certainly is going to be that there's no din of taking away ribis. Ribis ktsutza, we said Rabbi Lazar holds. I think Rabbi Lazar said you don't take away even ribis ktsutza, and others said Rabbanan say you do take away ribis ktsutza. But ribis, avak ribis, everyone agrees you would not take it away. So this case where the seller had reserved the right to repurchase his property, and the buyer had been eating ribis in the meantime. What's the din about the seller taking away that Paris, those Paris that the purchaser had bought, which have a din of at least mechzik ribis and possibly ribis ktsutza? So Gemara, ribis ktsutza hava v'yoytzem b'diyan. Is it treated as ribis ktsutza, these Paris that were taken by the purchaser, and therefore you do take it out with the yanim? Or is it like avak ribis? Amar Rabba Barafuna, Mistabra ki avak ribis hava v'en yoytzem b'diyan. Rabba Barafuna says, it's only avak ribis. This is it's set up as a sale, and when you have a sale, so that it's set up as a sale is not ribis ktsutza. There's actually two issues. It's also not a set amount because it's Paris, but this is Rishonim talk about why it would be possibly ribis ktsutza. Both of them say that it's going to be just avak ribis, it's not going to be ribis ktsutza. Amalei Abaya l'Rabba, Baisa to Rabba, Mashkanta ma. So we just decided in the case of a sale where the person who purchased it has the right to repurchase, where any Paris that the purchaser gets would be treated as avak ribis, that you would not take away the Paris from the purchaser. What about a mashkanta, where it wasn't set up as a sale, but rather was set up as a loan? Reuven borrowed money from Shimon, and he gave him a mashkin. And we said the mashkin is more than the amount of the sale. And in the meantime, the problem is, like we said before, these payers that the lender is taking from the mashkin if he seizes the mashkin at the end. So certainly that mashkin he's going to have to give back, because we said it's a smach and he's going to have to give it back. But while he's the mashkin, he ate payers, and those payers we said is a problem of ribbis, smach ribbis, because in the end, what happened? Reuven borrowed money from Shimon, and Shimon took this property at the end, this extra valuable property, and he has to give it back to Reuven. But I mean, in the interim, he ate payers from it, and is that going to be treated as ribs? We say hasam time in mind mishum delay katzlei, hachanami like katzlei. Do we say the reason why, by the case of a sale, that we don't treat the payers as ribs ktutza, but rather as ribis avak ribis, is because there was no set amount. It was just the payers is however much it comes out to. So over here also, whatever payers the lender takes from it, it was not predetermined how much payers was going to be. Or do we say the reason why by the sale it's not considered to be ribis ktutza is because it was because it was a sale as opposed to in the context of a loan. So whenever it's the context of a sale, it's not treated as ribis ktutza. But over here, since the payers are being taken from a mashkin in the context of a loan, maybe that would be ribis ktutza, and you would take it away from the lender. He said, no, this is going to be ribis avak ribis, not ribis ktutza, and therefore you will not take it away from the lender. Amra Papi, Avad Ravina Uvda b'choshev ha'ofik peri. Rapapi disagreed with the conclusion that we just said, and he took away. He said it was treated as ribis ktutza when there was a loan, because it wasn't dependent on the fact that it was cuts. The only reason why by a sale it wasn't considered to be ribis ktutza is because it's in the context of a sale. Amar Ma Breder Rabbi Yosef Mishmei Rava. So this is a complicated topic. Hamashkanta, a mashkan, ba'asru de misalki, at a place where they are misalik, a person, a lender from the property. So we're talking about Reuven borrowed money from Shimon, and as a mashkin, he gave Shimon the right to use his property. Reuven had a property, and he gave it. He borrowed $1,000 from Shimon, and he said, "Here's my property of that's worth whatever it's worth. You hold on to it to pay back the loan." And in this place, the din was that if Reuven wanted to, he could prepay the loan and kick Shimon out of the property. The term of the loan was for 3 years. So Shimon took the property. He thought, oh, listen, I got rights to this property for 3 years. But in this place, that's not the case. He could prepay it. Very interesting. When I used to work, I worked for Countrywide Mortgages. You remember Countrywide Mortgages? The biggest lender in the country. And they used to, what do you call it? I forgot the word. They would resell all the mortgages. What was it called again? My memory's gone. Anyway, securitize. They would securitize the loans. The major factor in the value of a mortgage that was being resold is whether they could prepay. Someone could prepay, then the loan is the rights to get the payments on the loan is not very valuable because the owner, the the person, the debtor, can prepay it and stop paying, and then the rights to payments is not worth anything. So that's a similar concept over here. In Asher de Misalti, a place where the borrower has the right to prepay and kick the lender out of the property. So we have a mashkin in such a place. Achel shir zuzi, once the lender has consumed the amount of paris that equals the loan, that's credited toward the loan, and therefore we kick him out of the property, and we say the loan is paid up, and the debtor, the borrower, is free from anything more. Achel tfei, but if you didn't kick him out, and the lender kept on consuming the paris, loy mafkina minei, we don't take it away from him, because although that is treated as ribis, on what we say there was a loan and it was paid back, and now he got some extra, that's ribis. You don't take it away from him. It's not ribis ksutza. Not nishna dem, but loy machshavinen mishtara l'shtara, and that extra that he ate, you wouldn't use it to pay for a separate loan that Reuben had with Shimon. That's considered to be ribis on the first loan. It's not that he is consumed, which you can't take away from him, but it's not money that still belongs to Reuben. Over the Yasmi, the same din will be certainly that you could, once they finish it, once someone who had borrowed, Yasmi who had borrowed, or the father had borrowed, from the Reuben's died, and his children now are coming to get back their property that was given as a mashkin. Once Shimon has consumed paris in the amount of the loan, Shimon gets evicted from the property, and achol tvei mafkinim. In that case, we will take away the paris, because we say we're tainin and liyasmi, and the yasmi could have kicked him out as soon as he consumed the amount of paris. Now, you don't say that then when he keeps eating that it becomes ribis, but rather it was a failure on the part of the bezdin. They should have kicked him out, and we're tainin and liyasmi, so therefore we take it away from him. If Reuben had owed another loan out to Shimon, this extra that Shimon took will be used to pay it back. Rashi says, Ravashi disagrees. He says, now that we're saying if he eats more than the amount, you don't take it away from him. Even if he ate the shir zuzi, we also don't kick him out. Beloy zuzi. My timer, saluka beloy zuzi, afuka mine have. What's the reason? Why is it that we don't take away? Why is that we don't take away the extra money? Because we say it's considered as ribis. So even on the first part, the shir zuzi, that's also not going to be considered as payment automatically, a payment back of the parent of the loan. Beloy zuzi, my time. Let's go beloy zuzi. My time is saluki beloy zuzi. My time is saluki beloy zuzi. Afuki minei have avak ribis. Avak ribis and yotze b'dayan. I'm sorry, did I say this right? Achashu zuzi namlis beloy zuzi. Beloy zuzi. My time is saluki beloy zuzi. My time is saluki beloy zuzi. I'm sorry, I'm losing the thing.
If you see that if he ate more, you don't take that money away from him because it's a vak ribis. Then if he ate the same amount, then you don't take away the property from him because what he's eating is
not his. The same way it's a vak ribis because it doesn't belong to. I'm just trying to figure out where the what do you call it? The commas are. Achashir zuzi, when he ate. I'm sorry. If he exceeds the amount, you don't take it away from the lender. even if it's less than the amount of the Karen, you're not going to kick out the lender.
If he ate the amount of the loan,
yeah.
In other words, you don't take away the property from him without the money, right?
Right. My time is Saluke Bloy Zuzi. So this is the part I'm stuck by.
My time, what's the reason we don't do that? Saluke Bloy Zuzi, in other words, taking him out of the property without payment of cash, Apukim Minehu, is the same as taking is the same as when you would take money if he ate more. Is the same as like taking...
It's the same thing as the din of being mafik the Paris from him.
Right.
Yeah. And therefore bribes all of this, whatever he's taking, is avak ribis, and he gets to keep it. So just like he gets to keep when he exceeds the Karen, even under the amount of Karen, even in a case where Misalkinan, where he can prepay, but since he didn't use it, he didn't designate it as prepayment, he didn't give him cash, so it's all considered to be that the borrower allowed the lender to keep it as ribis. So it's all ribis from the beginning. Abed Ravashi of the B'Yisayim Katanim Kigdailim. And once that's the case, if it's all going to be treated as an extra payment, it's all not going toward the Karen, so then it turns out that it wasn't a chesaron. If it's a assignment, there's no chesaron that they should have tined to kick him out using the payers that he had already received, because, like we said, according to Ravashi, the payers are also considered to be just an extra payment, and you couldn't use it. So therefore, your assignment were not any different because you don't have a taina that should have been made to them to kick them out. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll talk about Nachaisa tomorrow. Shkayach.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care.